When I walked into my living room that evening, I knew immediately this wasn't an ordinary night at home. The energy was different. The lighting was different. My husband was standing there, but he wasn't alone. And the way he looked at me, it wasn't apologetic. It was intentional. One of his friends was there. On what was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday evening. And nothing about this felt casual or unplanned. What happened next wasn't what you might expect. This isn't a story about betrayal. It's a story about choice. A choice I didn't know I'd be making until I stood there in my own living room. If you've ever wondered how trust can deepen in unexpected ways, or what happens when someone creates space for you to explore your own boundaries, keep watching. Let me start from the beginning. Because context matters. That evening began like so many others. I came home from work around 6:30. The house smelled like the rosemary chicken my husband had promised to make. Soft music played from the kitchen. Everything felt normal. Comfortable. Predictable. I called out as I hung up my coat. "Something smells amazing." My husband's voice came from the living room, not the kitchen. "In here." That was the first small shift. He wasn't in the kitchen finishing dinner. He was in the living room. But I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was setting the table in there. Maybe he wanted to show me something. I walked down the hallway, thinking about changing into comfortable clothes. Thinking about a glass of wine. Thinking about the simple pleasure of a quiet evening at home. The living room door was slightly open. I pushed it open. And that's when the ordinary evening ended. I noticed the lighting first. My husband usually keeps the living room bright in the evenings. But that night, the room was lit by just 2 lamps. Soft, warm light that created gentle shadows. My husband was standing near the fireplace. Not pacing. Not fidgeting. Just standing. His posture was relaxed but intentional. And then I saw the second person. Sitting in the armchair by the bookshelf. A man. Someone I recognized. It was Alex. My husband's friend from college. We'd had dinner with him and his wife a few times over the years. Pleasant. Interesting to talk to. An architect, I remembered. Alex wasn't leaning forward eagerly. He wasn't looking at me with any particular expression. He was just there. Sitting calmly. Waiting. For me. The understanding came in layers. First, I recognized Alex's face. Alex is here. That's unexpected. Did I forget about plans? Second, I recognized the energy in the room. This wasn't a casual visit. The energy was too still. Too deliberate. Third, I recognized my husband's expression. And that was the most disorienting part. He wasn't surprised to see me. He had been expecting me. But more than that, he was expecting my reaction. He was watching for it. His eyes were on my face, observing my confusion, my pause in the doorway. And his expression, it wasn't guilty. It wasn't apologetic. It was expectant. Curious. Alex nodded to me. A small, respectful acknowledgement. "Hello," he said. His voice was calm. Normal. I looked back at my husband. Waiting for an explanation. For any normal reason someone might be unexpectedly in your living room. My husband didn't offer one. Not immediately. "Come in," my husband said. His voice was gentle. The same gentle tone he uses when I'm stressed and he's trying to calm me. But there was a steadiness underneath. I stepped fully into the room. The door swung closed behind me with a soft click. My husband didn't move toward me. He stayed by the fireplace. Giving me space. Letting me take in the scene without immediate reassurance or explanation. That, I realized later, was important. He didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it stretch. He let me stand there, in my work clothes, with my bag still over my shoulder, looking from him to Alex and back again. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was deep confusion. The pieces didn't fit together. Alex is joining us for dinner? I asked finally. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too polite. Not exactly, my husband said. Then he added, take your time. Breathe. That instruction, breathe, made my attention sharpen. People don't tell you to breathe when everything is normal. They tell you to breathe when something significant is happening. I did breathe. A deliberate, slow breath. In through my nose. Out through my mouth. And as I breathed, I looked more carefully. At my husband. At Alex. At the space between us all. And I began to understand that this wasn't about dinner. My husband spoke again. Slowly. Clearly. We've been talking, he began. You and I. About curiosity. About what it means to explore edges in a relationship. He was right. We had been having those conversations. Late-night conversations. Philosophical discussions about how relationships evolve. They had been abstract. Theoretical. Safe because they were hypothetical. I'd been thinking about those conversations, he continued. And I realized something. We were talking about ideas. But I was curious about creating space for experience. He glanced at Alex, then back at me. I asked Alex if he would be willing to help create that space. A safe space. With clear boundaries. Alex nodded slightly. My husband continued. Nothing will happen unless you want it to. Everything is your choice. Every step. You can leave the room right now. You can ask Alex to leave. You can decide this isn't for you. All of those are completely valid choices. He paused, letting that sink in. But I wanted you to have this choice. This opportunity. And I wanted to be here. To witness. If you choose to explore. The room seemed to shift around me. Or maybe it was my understanding shifting. Alex spoke. His voice was calm. Reassuring. I'm here as a friend. As someone who respects you both. And I understand that no means no at any point. After my husband finished speaking, the room transformed. It wasn't just my living room anymore. It was a container. A space where something significant might happen. Or might not happen. The furniture looked the same. The books. The rug. The photographs. But everything felt different. Charged with possibility. With intention. I realized I was still holding my work bag. I set it down slowly. The movement felt deliberate. My husband watched me. He was reading my body language. The way I was standing. The way I had set down the bag. Alex didn't move from the armchair. He remained where he was. Giving me space. Letting me decide how close I wanted to stand. Whether I wanted to sit. Whether I wanted to leave. I felt seen in a new way. Not because anyone was looking at my body in a particular way. But because I was being observed while I made a decision. While I decided who I was going to be in this unexpected situation. My husband had said I could leave. That was a real option. I could say, I'm not comfortable with this, and walk out. He would respect that. Alex would leave. We would have dinner. Life would continue. But the other option, the option to stay. To explore. To see what might happen in this carefully created space, that option existed too. With my husband's blessing. With his presence. With his attention. I stood there for what felt like a long time. Time had become elastic. I looked at my husband. His face was open. Not pushing. Just present. I looked at Alex. He met my gaze calmly. No pressure. Just readiness. Readiness to follow my lead. I thought about all those late-night conversations. The theoretical discussions about curiosity. About what it might feel like to connect with someone new after years of connection with one person. This was no longer theoretical. This was a man in my living room. A man who was not my husband. A man who was here with my husband's knowledge. With his arrangement. And my husband was here too. Watching. Not to control. But to witness. I took a step forward. Then another. Moving from the doorway toward the center of the room. Toward the space between my husband and Alex. The movement was deliberate. Slow. I was testing how it felt to move closer. To enter the space they had created. My husband's eyes followed me. He didn't smile. He didn't nod encouragement. He just watched. Observing my decision to move rather than leave. Alex remained in the armchair. But he shifted slightly. Opening his posture. Making space. An invitation without demand. When I reached the center of the room, I stopped. I was standing about 6 feet from Alex. About 8 feet from my husband. In the space between them. I looked at Alex. Really looked at him. Not as my husband's friend. Not as an unexpected guest. But as a person. A person who was here for a specific reason. A person waiting for my cue. He didn't stand up. He didn't reach for me. He stayed seated. But he extended his hand. Palm up. An offering. Not a demand. A hand offered. Not taken until I chose to take it. I looked at his hand. I looked at my husband. My husband gave the smallest nod. Not a yes or no. Just an acknowledgement. I see this moment. I reached out. My hand moved slowly through the air between us. When my fingers touched his palm, the contact was minimal. Just the tips of my fingers against his skin. But in that minimal contact, everything amplified. I was touching someone who wasn't my husband. In my living room. With my husband watching. By choice. The sensation was less about the physical touch and more about the context. The permission. The transparency. Alex's hand was warm. Steady. He didn't close his fingers around mine. He left his hand open. Letting me decide the pressure. The duration. As my fingers rested against Alex's palm, I became aware of my body in new ways. My breathing had changed. It was deeper. Slower. I was aware of my heartbeat. Not racing, but steady. Present. I was aware of space between my shoulder blades. A place where I often carry tension. That tension was softening. Most of all, I was aware of my husband's presence. His attention. His quiet observation from across the room. I turned my head to look at him. He was leaning against the mantel. His arms crossed loosely. His expression was focused but relaxed. He was watching my face. My reactions. He wasn't watching Alex. He was watching me. Watching how I was experiencing this moment. That awareness that I was being witnessed while I experienced something new changed the quality of the experience. It made it more present. More conscious. I looked back at Alex. He was watching me too. But differently. His attention was on our connection. On the space between our hands. Two different kinds of attention. My husband witnessing my experience. Alex participating in the experience with me. And me. In the middle. Experiencing both. I withdrew my hand from Alex's palm. The movement was slow. Deliberate. Not a rejection. A pause. Alex lowered his hand. He waited. I took a step closer to him. Now I was standing right in front of his chair. Looking down at him. He looked up at me. His expression was calm. Open. I reached out again. This time, my hand went to his shoulder. Not a romantic gesture. A connecting gesture. My fingers rested on the fabric of his shirt. Feeling the warmth beneath. The solidity. This touch was more substantial than the hand contact. More intentional. And again, I was aware of my husband watching. Witnessing this moment. Witnessing me choosing to touch someone else. With his complete knowledge and presence. Alex placed his hand over mine on his shoulder. Not grasping. Just covering. A reciprocal connection. His hand was warm. His touch was firm but gentle. We stayed like that. My hand on his shoulder. His hand covering mine. My husband watching from across the room. Nothing needed to happen beyond this. The closeness was enough. The permission was enough. The awareness was enough. I felt my posture softening. My shoulders dropping. My spine lengthening. I was relaxing into this moment. Into this choice. Later, my husband would tell me what he had been watching in those moments. I wasn't watching you touch Alex, he said. I was watching you discover your own freedom. I was watching you realize you could choose this. And that your choice would be respected. I was watching you become more present. He described what he saw, the moment my breathing changed. The moment my shoulders relaxed. The moment my face softened from confusion to presence. I was watching you stop worrying about what this meant, he said. And just be. In the experience. That, he told me, was what he found most meaningful. Not the image of me with someone else. But the transformation in me as I moved from uncertainty to choice. In the room that night, I could feel his attention. I could feel that he wasn't watching with jealousy. He was watching with curiosity. With appreciation. Alex's thumb moved gently over the back of my hand. A small circle. A tender gesture. I closed my eyes. Not to block anything out. To feel more deeply. With my eyes closed, the other senses heightened. The warmth of Alex's hand over mine. The sound of my own breathing. The awareness of my husband's presence. The touch remained light. Careful. Respectful. One of the most powerful aspects of that evening was the complete absence of rush. No one was hurrying toward anything. No one had an agenda beyond being present. Alex didn't try to escalate the touch. He didn't try to pull me closer. My husband didn't interrupt. Didn't give instructions. And I didn't feel pressure to do anything. To achieve anything. We were all simply present in a moment that was unfolding at its own pace. A moment built around my choice. My readiness. After several minutes, I opened my eyes. I looked at Alex. He was looking at me. His expression was gentle. Respectful. I smiled. A small, genuine smile. This is a strange and meaningful moment smile. He smiled back. I removed my hand from his shoulder. His hand fell away. The connection was broken, but the memory of it remained. I turned to look at my husband. He was still leaning against the mantel. Still watching. His expression had softened. There was something in his eyes, appreciation. Connection. I walked across the room to my husband. Not away from Alex. Toward my husband. When I reached him, I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He reached out and took both my hands in his. His hands were warm. Familiar. Thank you, he said softly. For what? I asked. For trusting me enough to stay. For trusting yourself enough to explore. I realized in that moment what he had created. He hadn't created a scenario for me to be with someone else. He had created a scenario for me to discover my own agency. My own boundaries. And he had created it in the safest possible way. In our home. with someone he trusted, with complete transparency, with my consent at every step. The surprise had created tension. The unexpectedness had created energy. But the choice, my choice, that was what made it powerful. I looked back at Alex. He was standing now, preparing to leave. "Thank you," I said to him. He nodded. "It was an honor," he said. My husband walked Alex to the door. I heard their quiet voices in the hallway. Then the front door opening and closing. Silence. My husband returned to the living room. He came to stand beside me. We both looked at the empty armchair where Alex had been sitting. The room felt different again. Not charged with possibility anymore, but changed. Like a space that has held something significant. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't need to. We had dinner. The rosemary chicken was perfect. We drank wine. We talked about ordinary things. But underneath flowed a new current of understanding. Something had shifted between us. Not a dramatic shift. A subtle, profound deepening. The shift was in the trust. We had stretched it to an edge we didn't know existed. And instead of breaking, it had expanded. It had become more resilient. In the days that followed, I noticed changes. I was more present. More aware of my own desires. More confident in expressing what I wanted. And I noticed changes in my husband. He was more secure. Not in a possessive way. In a grounded way. He had witnessed me choosing. And I had chosen to stay with him. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. The unexpected invitation hadn't been about introducing another person. It had been about introducing more choice. More transparency. More conscious presence. And in doing that, it hadn't taken anything away from our relationship. It had added a new dimension. A dimension of complete honesty. Of radical trust. My husband didn't need to control my experiences to feel secure. He needed to trust that, given complete freedom, I would still choose him. And that night, in that softly lit living room, I did choose him. I chose the man who loved me enough to give me space to discover myself. And that choice, made in complete freedom, was more powerful than any promise made under constraint could ever be.